book. It's a puff sleeve. So you can see the diagram there is number 12. So again, there's a few sleeves on this page. It's packed in a bit, I think. And 12 in this case is going across. So it's a bit funny because a lot of our diagrams go down and the diagram is at the top and then this next step. And in this case, the diagram is going across. Step 1, step 2, and step 3. But what you might notice is step 1 is the same as our step 1 for our flared sleeve here. So if you look at the puff sleeve, you've got extra on the top, haven't you? And extra on the bottom of the sleeve. So it's like you're taking the regular sleeve block and we're not just adding extra on the bottom, we're adding extra on the top and the bottom. And then with the sewing, we're going to gather it in. We're going to gather it in at the top and we're going to gather it in at the bottom. So we're creating a bigger sleeve, but we want to keep this general shape so when we sew it back in, it still has that sleeve head and that. I'll just read through again. I think it's really good to read through so you'll hear her language. She says, trace the short sleeve length required. So again, number 1 is length. Okay? That's your first thing. You just decide on your length. Then she says, draw 5 vertical lines from the sleeve head to divide the sleeve into 6 sections, which is exactly what we did on the last one. Cut up the lines, open each line at the top and the bottom the required amount. So in this case, we're not just opening at the bottom, we're opening at the top and the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so do you see the way it looks there on the diagram? So step 2, yours is going to look like that. The grey bit is the bit that you've opened it out and spread. I just want to see what else she says. Trace around the new pattern shape. Redraw the sleeve head with smooth curves. So she's telling you straight away, once you spread it out, it's going to look funny, the curve. So we're going to reshape that. And then she says, adding extra depth to the sleeve head and the hem lines as shown. So on this last diagram, she has come up a little bit. There's a dotted line. And that's the original block, and then there's an extra that she's added on. Yeah, so if you think about it, the sleeve, like my sleeve, comes from here down, that's fine. If I was to, make this a puff, wouldn't this go kind of up?
Yeah.
Which would mean it would pull the hem up, and so then it would be like short there. So you have to add to compensate. So we add a bit because we're imagining the sleeve is going up here. And that's going to pull the hem, so we kind of add a bit down to the hem, so as it gets pulled up it's actually coming back to being straight. So on the pattern it will look like it's dipped down, so it's again another one of these slightly optical illusions. It's going to, on the flat it's going to be dipped down, but that's to allow for the fact that it will be pulled up, or the amount that would pull out there into the cuff and sit out. Do you know? That makes sense, kind of? Mm-hmm. So there are our steps. So what's nice about this one is you can keep this same one. What I'm going to do, just to make it slightly different, is I'm going to just draw a different line in blue, a length line. So I'm going to make this a little bit shorter, okay? Because it probably would anyway. Like if you look at that, it's not going to stop at the elbow. You're not going to put a cuff at the elbow. So you'd shorten it and have it there. So I'm going to come up, say 10 centimeters full scale, and just draw a line. But so you can just draw this on your other construction. So this is an example then of how much we can layer our construction. We can take several sleeves off of this one construction, do you know? And it's another reason why you don't cut it and move it on. You can keep coming back to the same one. So we can do a flared one from this, we can do our puff one from that line. And again, you're just going to cut this out, the same thing but from the shorter line. You're going to cut it out. The thing is with this, we're going to cut them apart. Now when you cut them apart, they get a bit abstracted and they These ones look very similar and so do those, so you want to number them. Just to be on the safe side, if you cut them apart and one falls on the ground and then you're like putting it back and you don't know which way it goes, which way around, then you could have it slightly wrong, so it's handy to number it. So how much you spread this out would be, again, up to you, how much puff you want. I'm going to say choose 8 centimeters, so it's a fair amount. What I'm going to start with for my second, my part 2 of my construction is a straight line, because when I separate these out and start cutting them, they could be up and down, but I want them to be along a straight line. So I'm going to draw my straight line first, and then I'm going to cut. And in this case, it doesn't really matter if you want to. I tend to start from the middle just so I can kind of balance it on my paper and I don't run off. But you could start from one side and just start gluing down. So I'm going to start with one. Say I'm going to do this one. I'm going to start from one side and go to the other. So I'm going to place one down on that line. So if these lines match up, this should be perpendicular, should be squared. So if it's at an angle, that's an issue. And then I'm going to measure out 8. I'm going to do a couple of lines, or a couple of marks there. This is 8 full scale. For you guys, that's 4. And then you see, it's handy if I have my 2, so these are all cut separate, I'm not getting mixed up. I know I need to put number 2 next. Again, quick little bit of glue down the middle, place 2 there. Okay, same again, same again, same again. I might run out of paper, who knows. Should have started a bit further over. Might just make it. So this is now, each one is spaced 8 centimeters, and I'm going to smooth the top line. But the first thing I'm going to do is add extra. It depends on how much you spread, how much you add. So you could put a little note here. If you spread it less, so I do tend to look by eye. It tends to be 1 to 2 centimeters. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 centimeters. Have it be larger. I think on the notes, doing things larger makes them more obvious, especially when you half scale them. You see them more obviously. So I have to go from here, so I think it'd be good if people haven't put their eyes up here just for a second, because this is a little bit tricky. Do you see this curve? I have to go from here to here. This was my original point, but it's now spread, say, here. So how do I curve this? We are looking at give and take. Was I explaining that concept already about, like generally speaking, when you're smoothing off lines, you like say, this is my point and this is my point. So how do I smooth off between those that are so spread? I would give a little bit to that and take a bit down from that and kind of come between them. You know, sometimes people just come on this and then they just go like, do this huge thing, like as if this is telling you the direction to go or something. But this was our point that used to be together, and it's now been spread, and we need to blend. So we need to kind of find the halfway, do you know? So to me, I'd be like thinking that I need to come up a bit here, I need to come down a bit here, and then I'd be kind of keeping that curve, do you know? Keeping the same proportion, because you're trying to keep the similar proportion. It's been spread out. Same on this one. Now the thing is, we add to this, so we are going to be probably just mainly, because there's an extra addition, like if I was just blending to this point, I'd come down here and up here as well. But because I'm adding here, I'm going to probably come up. So it's mainly here that you're blending. You're coming down a bit on this and up a bit. So I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to come down here, oopsie, and I'm going to come up here. Now for this, I'm going to mainly add, because I'm coming from here to here, and it's kind of just working out to be maybe somewhat close to coming to that, the tip of that. Okay. So it's yeah, and that's a bit dodgy there. I'm going to come down a little bit. Okay, so you probably need to, you know, sketch it a little bit just to see. That's a little bit sketchy, but do you see what I mean? It's a nice gradual curve like that. It isn't like you follow this and you go up and then you flatten out or anything. It's like that. Okay, and so same again here. We've got this position and this position, so I'm going to come from here, but I'm going to blend from here. I'm going to take off this corner. I'm coming, it's too, I'm not following that curve, but I'm going to kind of curve it up. And now I need to come up here. I might end up cutting that corner off. Okay. So I've done a bit of give here, a lot more give and some take. That's because I've added some. And then I've done some give here and some take here. And that is the concept of give and take when you're smoothing, when you've spread things out.
Is there a certain distance between the two, like that little notch there?
Here and here?
Yeah.
It's 2, sorry, yes. Okay, so that's my top curve. Okay, so you attempt that, but then also on the bottom, I'm going to come down 2 as well. And that's just more like a straight curve. You can use whatever tool you use for curving, or just your eye, and kind of, it's just a slow, gentle curve. So for you guys, that's 1 centimeter. And that is construction step 2, and we will then do our final trace off, and our final trace off is going to be just along the final lines that we've done. So again, we're not giving the information about how we spread it, we're not tracing any of these lines, we're tracing the outline, which is that red line there, this red line here. But now we need to give some instruction. So when we give instruction, when it's gathered, you need to draw a line and an arrow to the end and to that end and write gathers in there. Remember we did that on the gathered skirt? We drew a line and we wrote gathers. So again, we're coming back to that technique. This is gathered. And so this is your other way of gathering. In that skirt, we just went out because it was kind of already square, and we just went wider. We just drew a square, didn't we? So if you have something that you want to gather that's already a shape, like this sleeve, or it could be a section on a garment that's a shape, and you want to spread it, but you need to keep the angle a bit, this is the method you would use. If something is rectangular, you don't need to cut, you know, for gathers, you can just add more. But if it's shaped, you need to cut and spread, and then try and imitate that angle so that it stays, keeps its shape. Okay, so I'm going to trace this off, see what the trace off is like. Again, notice on my trace offs, I'm not necessarily drawing the seam allowance in, I'm not necessarily drawing the labeling, because you guys need to be doing that yourselves and figuring some of that out. Again, the labeling would be your name. This is called a puff sleeve, and you'd be cutting 2 of them, okay? Now there's notches on the sleeve. You see them there and there. I still, when the gather, I still transfer them. I know it's rough, but I'd prefer to have the notch roughly marked than not have any notch at all. Okay, you'll see when you put in sleeves. So I've just kind of come over a bit from where that notch is onto my new line, and same here, and just kind of marked them in. I think it's better to have something rather than nothing. So that's your final pattern piece. Yeah, so whenever you cut on your grain line and spread, you need to draw back in another grain line. So I would find the center of that. And also, that would also be a notch that you would have for the top. So have it like that, and then it should really always be on the pattern and then transferred on here, so that so I can see where you got it from, because there's nowhere here for us to know how to get it. So it must come from somewhere else. So I'm going to put this back on and transfer in my grain line and my notch. And often I write a B and an F, just they're so similar. I just find that helpful, as well as my labeling. The way I draw the labeling, as in when I want you to draw the labeling, is I put a box. When I draw a box, that means you put your labels in yourself. And the box is to represent that the labels should all be close together, not like your name here, sleeve here, something else cutting over here, which some people do. I don't know why, but put it all together is helpful. Or maybe what I should draw is like 3 lines or whatever.